National parks of the Great Southwest spread across extreme lands of unrivaled beauty. From surreal rock arches to soaring sand dunes. In a place where only the strong survive, we'll saddle up to take in cactus country. Test our metal mountain biking. Skydive for a bird's eye view. And meet some rugged residents. It's not all rough going. We'll sample gourmet meals. Say I do amid a lush oasis. And savor a sunset. As we travel way off the beaten path to uncover 4 gems of the Great Southwest. We'll begin at sunrise in Canyonlands National Park. Photographers flock to Mesa Arch to capture the morning glow. Majestic, regal, unrivaled. Canyonlands stretches over 527 square miles in the southeast corner of Utah, and it's a feast for the eyes. The story of the Earth is told in the strata of rock, sculpted over millions of years into a tapestry of natural wonders.
This is called red rock country because there's so much red rock available for the eye to see. It's not covered up by dirt and plants, typically. It's a vast plain of red.
The red comes from the mineral iron oxide in the sandstone. While red is the dominant color, there are a rich variety of hues. At Upheaval Dome, rock layers are dramatically formed around a bullseye pattern nearly 3 miles across. "300 million years ago, shallow seas covered this area. Layer by layer, sediments were laid down. The canyons of Canyonlands are formed by the forces of gravity and erosion as 2 powerful rivers cut their way through the rock.
The canyons were initially carved by the Green and Colorado rivers, and then it was really the effect of rainstorms, water coming down, a little bit acidic, breaking up the bonds, the cement between the sand grains, just grain by grain.
Between the mesas, the canyons, and the moderate weather, the forces of nature have created the perfect backdrop for boating. The park limits river traffic to private or guided tours with permits. Sherry Griffith Expeditions enters the Colorado River outside the park and takes you on a scenic glide through its walled canyons.
You get right into the river's pace and the feel of it, and you kind of absorb a little piece of Canyonlands when you're in the river. It's not a huge amount of adrenaline, it's just very calming and relaxing.
The Colorado acts as a mirror, reflecting its surroundings. Floating by, you gain a whole new perspective.
The canyon rises around you, so you start out in the kind of a flat section and it grows up around you, these big red towers, and you get deeper and deeper inside the canyon. So by the end of the trip, you're really in the heart of Canyonlands National Park. Get to see the big towers, a lot of big beaches. It's really a grand place, a beautiful place.
Yet the journey goes beyond the river. In this largest of Utah's national parks, hikers can seek out their own secluded adventures. A trek into Horseshoe Canyon takes you to hallowed ground. But getting there is not so simple. Traveling through the high desert involves several changes in elevation, and in this maze of canyons, you need to stay on the trail. A trail that stretches across a long, dry riverbed through some rugged country. But the worthiness of the Odyssey becomes all too apparent 3 miles in. A 200-foot-long and 15-foot-high masterpiece is painted on a sheer sandstone wall. Hailed as the Louvre of the Southwest by some, the Great Gallery by others, the scale of the human-like figures depicted is actually larger than life. Experts speculate the art dates back to the late Archaic period, from approximately 2500 BC to 400 AD. The rock paintings offer a rare glimpse into the past.
Well, most of the figures here are what we call anthropomorphic, which means are human-like figures, but they're not normal, typical human-like figures. They have elements of animals and designs inside. It's interesting too in that the elements seem to be related to each other and tell a story.
The time and effort to create a panel of this magnitude implies the story was important. But the real meaning, like a lot of things in the desert, remains a mystery. The amazing canyons of Canyonlands are a modern-day mecca for mountain bikers. Each year, thousands of them take to the White Rim Trail. Originally built to mine uranium, the park maintains this 103-mile rugged route. A course that covers 6,000 vertical feet takes up to 3 days to master.
Coming to a place like this is almost like going to another planet for most people. And so the idea that you could immerse yourself in this scenery and in this kind of, backcountry adventure terrain for days at a time is a really neat experience.
For some, the White Rim is a rite of passage.
The scenery is so spectacular, and every turn you go around is just another vista, and it's just mind-blowing.
For those who choose to push their limits or set new ones, outside the park, an area called Slick Rock is a magnet. Early settlers called it Slick Rock because their metal-shod horses had trouble traversing it.
But for bikes, the rubber of the tires actually grips to it really well. And so you have incredible traction. The slick rock terrain is just fantastic for riding on, and you can go up and down steeper grades than you could ever do on dirt.
12 miles long, the Slick Rock Trail is not for beginners. Steep grades challenge the best of the best. Motorcyclists can also test their mettle on slick rock. But for hardcore bikers, this destination is considered world-class. National Parks of the Great Southwest continues to explore southern Utah. Located 27 miles from Canyonlands, Arches National Park is a sight to behold. Here, you'll find one of the largest concentrations of natural arches in the world. Over 2,500 to date. And no two of these magical and at times surreal shapes are alike. An arch, a continuous span of stone, is formed by the process of erosion.
You have sandstone deposits that were cracked and are now exposed, and how they were cracked was in very parallel type lines. And so as erosion has worked down into those cracks, it's exposed these very tall, narrow fins. And water just finds a weak spot in that fin and starts working away, slowly eroding out until it breaks through. Once you've kind of gotten a hole formed and broken through, gravity can start working away on it, water continues to work on it, and over time you get an opening.
Perched precariously on the edge of a small canyon, Delicate Arch is the most famous form in the park. Landscape Arch, one of the longest spans in the world, measures 306 feet across. Double Arch, containing 2 arches, looks like it could be the lair of a comic book superhero. But erosion reaps more than arches. There are an astounding variety of other natural features. A stark row of high-rise ridges is called Park Avenue. Nearby, in splendid isolation, courthouse towers jut out of the mesa. Countless other formations compel people to explore them one-on-one. In the park, Owl Rock is one of the few places where you can climb. Rock jocks take on a lone 100-foot tower rated easy to moderately difficult. This traditional or free climb involves making your own way upwards following the vertical cracks in the rock.
Because each of these different layers that you see out here has their own characteristics, you know, no 2 climbs are very much alike, and also you can go to different sedimentary layers.
For those who seek more of a challenge, this one on sheer rock, Wall Street, right outside the park, is the spot. This major climbing destination offers both bolted routes and free or crack climbs. Whatever way these wall rats choose, they never lose sight of the danger.
We all get scared. I think that is part of the experience.
While it's climb at your own risk, local outfitter Moab Cliffs and Canyons can suit you up with the right equipment and teach you techniques. There are tons of nooks and crannies to get the blood pumping. The sport of canyoneering can take you down to places you'd never be able to get to without a rope, a partner, and a bit of bravado.
Canyoneering techniques employ a lot of the same rock climbing techniques as well. For instance, rappelling to get off of something, and it's usually the way we get into something.
Venturing deep into unfamiliar canyons is a risky business that involves teamwork and total concentration.
There's limitless lifetimes worth of exploration to be had in these canyons and features to be explored.
Hey, I'm over too. I'm past it.
In a place where extreme exploring can mean a rappel off a cliff, everyone gets to decide for themselves just how far they're willing to go. Throughout both Canyonlands and Arches, every corner reveals another vista, another surprise, another possibility. The contrast of the red rock against the desert skies adds another layer.
The skies are spectacular blue because we have such low humidity here. So you get a very dark color of blue that you don't get to see in the east or even in the west in LA. So people come out here and are amazed with the darkness of the blue. Here in the Southwest, the clouds add contrast to the rocks. So it'll add a different type of depth, and one near rock will be really lit up and the back one will be dark. It's really an amazing contrast.
While some are content to stare at the sky, others take to it.
We call ourselves America's most scenic skydiving center. We take you out for a 30-minute flight out towards Canyonlands National Park, and over Arches National Park, right over this beautiful red rocks, and you can really see it out.
Then it's time to take the plunge. Once over their target area outside the park, skydivers plummet to the ground at 120 miles an hour.
When the parachute opens up, it's very quiet. You feel like you're suspended in air, like you're not moving. You don't feel like you're going down. You don't feel like anything's radical. It's very peaceful, and that's when everything just comes together, and you're like, I just jumped out of an airplane.
You have less than 7 minutes to float around before you have to deal with the touchdown.
Most people think that it's going to be a hard landing, but when they come into gliding in, we're only coming in at 10 miles per hour, and 95% of the time it's a nice stand-up landing.
In such a magnificent, wide-open space, the real adventure comes easy when you take a moment to open your eyes and look around.
You can really get away from other people, and you can have that experience of being out alone. And you just feel like you're in the center of the universe.
National Parks of the Great Southwest travels to the desert of southern Arizona, to Saguaro National Park. A park divided by the city of Tucson, with an east and west district that protects part of the Sonoran Desert. Here, the saguaro cactus, the park's namesake, towers above it all. Saguaro became a national park to protect these large stands of cacti. Growing as tall as 50 feet and weighing up to 10 tons, these giants can live 200 years. Meaning some of them were just babies when Lincoln was in the White House. Like a suit of armor, a cloak of thorns is key to a long life.
Thorns on a cactus helps keep people's hands and animals' mouths and things away from the cactus. Thorns also actually provide shade, they've found. It can help reduce, not only reduce the amount of sunlight and temperature that way, but also helps insulate cactus in the wintertime as well.
Saguaros aren't alone. Some 50 species of cacti thrive where there's an annual rainfall of 12 inches. Yet when temperatures soar above 100 degrees in the summer, like all life in the desert, only the strong adapt and survive. At the top of the food chain, the solitary and elusive mountain lion's preferred dish is deer. But they can make a meal of smaller creatures like the javelina.
Many people would say, well, that's a pig. It's actually not in the pig family, but they look similar in some respects. They hang out in groups. They have large canines. You don't want to press one too much because then they can give you a nasty bite. They're fairly odoriferous. You know, when you're near them, you generally know because they're kind of smelly.
This herbivore is the critter you may come across in the park, feasting on cactus, spines and all. Another desert dweller can live for over half a century by just laying low.
They're a heavy-bodied animal. They're not like an aquatic turtle. They won't swim in the water. They'll sink like a stone. They're built more like a rock, and they look like a rock. So their ability to blend in with their background is probably their first line of defense.
To learn more about the desert tortoise, wildlife biologist Don Swan treks far and wide to track their moves. A pursuit that has some occupational hazards.
You have to be pretty careful because these tortoises do sometimes share their dens with other animals like Gila monsters and western diamondback rattlesnakes. So the first look is always a pretty careful one, and then we'll get down closer and see if we can see further back in the burrow and actually locate the tortoise itself.
signs say these denizens of the desert are doing well. In Saguaro, their populations are thriving. This is rattlesnake country. You'll find more species of rattlers in Arizona than any other state. This slithering symbol of the Southwest uses its forked tongue to search out its prey. The rattle is a warning device, so heed the sound. Arizona reports 200 to 400 snake bites a year. Most happen when humans try to handle a rattler.
The most famous characteristic of a rattlesnake is rattle. What's that all about?
For those who want a safe but close encounter, the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum, on the border of the park, has it all.
And by her presence, she's the
Venomous reptiles are only an arm's length away.
There's a special program called Live and Sort of on the Loose, and so what we do is actually take live venomous reptiles that are fully intact and then have them on a table not too far from people actually visiting. So there's a double barrier that keeps them a safe distance from it, but it's a very different perspective.
So this here is a very large male Gila monster.
Gila monsters are one of two venomous lizards found in North America.
The reproductive organs are, and then we'll be able to...
Almost 2 feet in length, their camouflage helps them hide amid rocky habitats to catch their prey off guard. Although the bobcat looks like a pretty kitty, this fierce predator weighs over 20 pounds. Bobcats get their name for their short bob tails. Going eye to eye with the creatures of the desert is what this museum is all about. 80% of the Desert Museum is outdoors, where the daily demonstrations also feature birds of prey. And when Saguaro National Park beckons you back, there's no better way to take it all in than on horseback.
I didn't think horses could go through that kind of terrain, but they can.
I love my horse, yeah. He got me down some rocky areas.
The Lazy K Bar Ranch offers trail rides into the park for all levels.
We tailor our riding program totally to the individual. We start out just on a basic low ride, kind of out in the flats, got a few little rolling hills into it. Once they feel comfortable there, we'll move up into a high ride, something a little faster, a little more advanced. A lot of folks really enjoy that, especially if they've never been around horses.
For the modern-day cowboy, the Lazy K puts on a weekly rodeo.
When people come to see the Old West, you know, they're also interested in seeing the rodeo, you know, how it all evolved, you know, where we're at, where the cowboy's at today.
Ready?
You don't have to be a pro to ride a bucking bronco. With training, kids can take a turn on a steer.
We offer the steers to, you know, kids wanting to learn how to do it all. It's kind of a building block to riding the bulls.
For this beginner, it's all about getting back in the game. Framed by two mountain ranges, Saguaro National Park in southern Arizona is called the Green Desert. Famous for its size and human-like shape, the saguaro cactus has become an icon of the Wild West. A Wild West Hollywood just couldn't seem to get enough of. If parts of this frontier town look familiar, it's for good reason. Nearby Saguaro, old Tucson Studios was built by Columbia Studios when they wanted to make a Western on location.
What Columbia did for that first movie, Arizona, back in 1939, is they went to the archives and they got the pictures, the maps, and the drawings. So what you had was 1860s Tucson in the middle of the desert.
Studios knew a good thing when they saw it.
Another like
John Wayne, the quintessential cowboy, shot 4 classics here, beginning with Rio Bravo and an all-star cast in 1958.
Dean Martin was in that, of course. And the list, as you go on to the modern times, the 1960s, we've had Frank Sinatra. You go to Burt Lancaster, Kirk Douglas. You go in even the current days, Gene Hackman, Sharon Stone, Leonardo DiCaprio. We went behind that.
Today, visitors are welcome to tour the old movie sets. Daily stunt demonstrations show how to take a free fall and pack a punch like a pro.
You're down.
Yeah.
Below the level of the wall. Okay. Up, bang.
In this working studio, you can go behind the scenes. And even if they're not yelling action, at Old Tucson, it's always high noon. With the making of the movies, the parade of stars needed a place to stay. The elegant Hacienda del Sol became their home away from home. This Spanish mission-style hotel, built in the 1920s, was lovingly restored by its current owners as a place where people can come to unwind. What sets this small luxury inn apart is the attention to detail and comfort. At nighttime, there's romance to spare. Luminaria lights lead the way to the inn's award-winning grill. The gourmet menu and extensive wine list go beyond the ordinary.
I like to bring a lot of fun wines in from all over the world and find the little wineries, find the unknown gems. And that's sort of what we specialize in. What people look for when they come here, they know they're going to be able to find something they've never come across before.
This winning combination of cuisine and comfort is set amid the lushest of deserts, where the saguaro cactus stands tall and the romance of the West lives on. Saguaro protects a land of big mountains, big desert, and even bigger skies. Once the sun goes down, it's time to peer into the heavens. Outside the park, high atop the Quinlan Mountains, the Kitt Peak National Observatory houses 24 optical and 2 radio telescopes, the largest collection on one mountain in the world. On a clear night, astronomers take aim.
Okay, I give you the next target. 6.
The observatory has been a draw for researchers since the early 1960s. They've used it to unlock many mysteries of the universe, from the discovery of dark matter to the birth of a star. Today's scientists gather around computer screens to study the data downloaded from state-of-the-art instruments.
Let's talk briefly about binoculars, because unbeknownst to many people, these are actually quite useful for doing astronomy. In fact, there's a bit of a trick here you can employ.
At this observatory,
to hold the binoculars steady.
Amateurs of all levels can participate. Classes can use the telescopes, and there's a reason for seeing red.
The reason red lights are used is because under these conditions, the eye is not overly sensitive to red. So it's possible to use red light to illuminate something without disturbing the eye's dark adaptation. For people wandering about here in the dark, they can come and go from areas lit with red light, and if they go back out into the dark, they still have that dark adapted eye.
At Kitt Peak, 50,000 people a year experience the many wonders of the western skies.
You know, the sky has that sort of built-in wow factor. Everybody's aware of it, and when they can see it the way we see it at Kitt Peak, I think it just deepens that. It creates an impression, and it helps them appreciate just the wondrous nature of the universe.
Stark, serene, surreal. Stretching along the border between California and Nevada, Death Valley is the biggest national park in the lower 48 states. Sunrise over the Mojave Desert reveals a valley 10 to 15 miles across and 150 miles long, where the air is so clear it seems like you can see forever. This land of extremes was formed some 5 million years ago.
The simplest thing is to think of it as blocks of rock that have been tilted and pulled apart, and the bottom of the valley has dropped down as the mountains through time have been pushed up, and to create the valley we know today, with mountains on one side that are 11,000 feet high and 8,000 feet high on the other side.
At the heart of Death Valley sits the lowest point in North America. A desolate area called Badwater is 282 feet below sea level.
Death Valley is a place of extremes, the lowest, hottest, and driest place in the nation. We have canyons, ridges, forests up in the upper elevations. So there's a wide variety of different types of habitats within those extremes of low elevation and high elevation.
Hundreds of thousands of years of water accumulating and evaporating in an ancient lake left behind salt flats covering over 40 miles. The Shoshone Indians called it Tomisha, meaning ground on fire. In the summer months, temperatures can reach 128 degrees. The mild climate is also the draw to Death Valley. From November to April, with highs in the 60s and 70s, you can explore canyons few ever see. An especially wet winter can turn Badwater Basin into a body of water. Spring showers bring wildflowers. When the desert explodes in bursts of color. And Salt Creek overflows with pupfish. This true survivor can number in the millions when conditions are just right. While modern-day visitors come for the unusual scenery, in the 1900s, strikes of gold and silver brought swarms of prospectors. Among them was one dubbed Death Valley Scotty. Nestled deep in Grapevine Canyon, Scotty's castle is an unexpected sight rising out of the desert sands. Truth be told, it isn't really a castle, and it didn't belong to Scotty. How it came to be is pure legend. It all started with a charismatic con man named Walter Scott.
He came out to Death Valley, which he knew very well, and he exploited the mystique of mining in Death Valley. The fact that many men had died here, that there were gold mines here hidden away in the canyons. He told everyone that would listen to him, and many did, that he had a secret gold mine here, and if they would invest with him, he would split his findings with them 50-50. He told that story to at least 100 different businessmen. It's hard to split a gold mine that many times.
Albert Johnson, an insurance tycoon from Chicago, eventually came out to check on his investment that wasn't panning out.
Well, it turns out there was no gold mine. And after investing several $1,000s, Albert Johnson figured it out. But that fact didn't seem to matter to him. He struck up a friendship with Scotty.
And he decided to stay. It took a decade in the 1920s for Albert and his wife Bessie to build Death Valley Ranch. a $2 million vacation home in the middle of nowhere. This Spanish-style villa spreads over 9 buildings, with arches, courtyards, and elaborate wrought iron details. When Scotty boasted to anyone that would listen that he built it with profits from his own gold mine, the Johnsons didn't let the truth get in the way of a good story. So the legend of Death Valley Scotty, the world's richest miner, was born.
He became famous for his showmanship, for riding fast cars, for lighting cigars with $100 bills, for throwing gold coins to the crowd.
As his fame grew, people began coming by the hundreds to meet Scotty and see his castle. Today, it's owned by the National Park Service. Guides in period dress give visitors a feel for what life was like out here in the 1930s. Inside, it's a marvel of interior design. The expansive Great Hall lives up to its name. To keep things cool, ceilings were built high so heat could escape. A music room has a vintage pipe organ. And there's a formal room for dining. The Johnsons wanted an antique look, so many things were custom crafted to appear old. But this old house was equipped with the most modern technology of its day.
Commercial electricity did not come here until 1964. They didn't even get telephone service here until 1975.
Johnson, an engineer by training, made his vacation home self-sufficient, complete with a hydroelectric power system that harnessed spring water to provide electricity. Scotty stayed in Death Valley. Although he never lived in the castle, the Johnsons did support him. No one struck it rich in this deal, but maybe they found something more valuable than gold. Over time, the Johnsons visited Death Valley less and less, but Scotty remained a fixture. He's buried on a hill overlooking his castle. In his own way, he drew in the tourists and helped pave the way for Death Valley to become a national park. Surrounded by 9 mountain ranges, Death Valley National Park is one of the most ruggedly beautiful parks of the Great Southwest. With more than 1,000 miles of both paved and dirt stretches, there's a whole lot of ground to cover. So, pack plenty of water and top off your tank. There's nothing but solitude and scenery. Our first stop, Zabriskie Point, with its signature jagged hill. Time and water turn these badlands into a natural work of art. Back along the valley floor, the road zigzags to a point where you can hike the dunes.
There's at least 5 different sets of sand dunes, and each of them a little bit different. But the ones that most of us see, the Mesquite Flat sand dunes over by Stovepipe Wells, are very accessible and, just a short 5-minute walk off the road.
While people may think sand dunes go hand in hand with a desert, they're actually found in less than 1% of the desert lands in North America. Conditions have to be just right to create a sand dune.
As the winds come in from the north, they run up against the steep face of Tuckeye Mountain, and that slows the winds down. And of course, the winds are carrying the small grains of sand.
Over several thousand years, sand deposits formed a 100-foot high dune and several lower ones. Along with sand dunes, there are canyons to explore. At Mosaic Canyon, a narrow passageway smoothly sculpted out of marble leads to patterns of polished mosaic-like fragments that give the canyon its name. This diverse land was forged by fire and volcanic eruption. Ubahibi, the youngest of the volcanoes, blew its top less than 1,000 years ago.
If one looks at it from the air, you see very similar craters to it, but they're much older, much more eroded away. It's a steam explosion crater, so that hot magma came up from below, reached the groundwater, and then there was a huge steam explosion sending ash up into the air, you know, probably more than 1,000 feet high.
The direction of the explosion left one side of the crater with sheer rock walls and piled a mountain of cinders on the other side. Out where civilization can be hard to come by, many hit the brakes when they see Furnace Creek. This oasis is the hub of the park. Furnace Creek Ranch offers affordable cabins with a spring-fed mineral pool to soak in. Nearby, you'll find a couple of unusual sights within a national park. An airstrip allows private planes to land. And there's even a place to shout for. Golfers can fly in for 18 holes at 214 feet below sea level. A mountain panorama and an occasional coyote grabbing a ball makes playing here unlike any other course. All this is courtesy of a mineral compound called borax that was used as a detergent. A local museum takes you back to a time when borax was hauled out of the valley in specially designed wagons by 20 mule teams. A taxing 10-day journey across the desert and over the Panamint Mountains paid off. And the mule teams made for great advertising.
And they started calling their borax products 20 Mule Team Borax, brought to you from the heart of Death Valley for the Pacific Coast Borax Company.
Borax eventually shut down its mines here and turned to tourism. The Furnace Creek Inn was built in 1927 as a first-class resort. This upscale refuge along the base of the Funeral Mountains has lush grounds, gardens, and palm groves on a terraced hillside. A pool fed by the mineral springs flowing around the property remains a comfortable 82 degrees year-round. With its 4-star setting, the inn is an ideal spot to tie the knot. The desert climate almost always guarantees sun for the ceremony. And for the morning after, everyone can enjoy one popular inn tradition. Sunday brunch showcases an array of colorful cuisines, prepared by Chef Michelle Hansen.
My prep station in the back has bank windows that are beautiful. You get to work and you see this beautiful view every day. And I look and I'm inspired. I see the colors.
For some, this sumptuous spread is a destination in its own right. Along with the fair, there's endless exploring, where you'll see some unusual sights.
Death Valley has always been rich in all kinds of minerals. In the 1850s, 60s, 70s, all the way up through the 1900s, the economically viable minerals have been mined out. But mostly what we have now are the mining ruins, the tunnels, these famous mining camps. There are hundreds of ghost towns in the area.
While most ghost towns have been reduced to rubble, Rhyolite, located outside the eastern border of the park, is remarkably intact. Local Riley McCoy explains why.
Most of the little western towns, gold mining towns and what have you, were just made out of lumber or tents. In Rhyolite, they chose concrete. We have the Overberry building, which is directly behind me here, which is a big office complex. Right up the street from it, we had the Cook Bank building, which had the United States Post Office down in the basement of it. So it was a very large city. 8,000 people right out here in the middle of the desert was quite unique at that time.
This railroad stop-off was a center for the mining districts until the boom went bust and everything shut down. The town's 53 saloons might have been the inspiration for one man's dream house. It took more than 100 bottles of beer to build these walls.
There was a gentleman by the name of Tom Kelly, and he apparently won a couple of lots down there in a game of chance, some way, shape, or form, and he decided he would build him a house made out of beer bottles.
Restored in 1925, this house is considered the best surviving example of bottle houses that were once found in the Wild West.
And by the way, Mr. Kelly never really lived in the bottle house. As soon as he finished it, he was quite the entrepreneur. He sold raffle tickets, and he raffled the building off and made a $2,000 profit, which was not too shabby in 1905.
You never know what you'll find in the desert. Hidden away on the west side of the park, a winding hike along a tricky trail involves some scrambling to get to a perpetual source of water. Cascading down in one of the hottest places on the planet, Darwin Falls is another reminder of the incredible diversity of Death Valley.
It takes you more than a few days, even more than a few weeks to see it all. So folks will come back year after year and always have something to look forward to. They're never going to see it all. I'll never see it all in my lifetime.
National parks of the Great Southwest offer scenic sanctuaries that are unsurpassed, where there's mystery and magic and endless adventures. You can boat through Red Rock, scale a sheer cliff wall, or take a leap into an abyss where the skies are an incredible shade of blue. These majestic lands of craters and arches and mountains millions of years in the making continue to both awe and inspire.